life ready, what does that really mean? We'll briefly go over work-based learning and some virtual aspects of how do we keep our students engaged in this process in the midst of distance learning. And then, of course, how do we also keep our industry leaders involved and connected with us? And we will have some question and answers at the end, but I will also have some transitional slides. When you see a blue transitional slide, feel free to, I'll take a quick pause for any questions, and then we'll continue with the presentation. So in today's session, it will be very interactive, so pre-warning for you all. When you see a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, just know that we are going to engage in a virtual activity, an interactive one, excuse me. Shout out to anyone who can actually name the 4 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I'll have to tell you, this is a great mechanism to use when you're presenting with your students. Use different characters so that they can talk about their strengths and how they see themselves in these characters and learn from a story. I'll have to say, I love the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, not only because they love pizza, but also because they were students. They were students who had a different emotional and behavioral needs. Students who had different styles of learning and retained information quite differently from each other. And they were students who just really needed that support and mentorship. And they actually had someone who was in their corner. And they had different skill sets. So they had some, push and pull there back and forth. But the whole premise of it is that they had a mentor, a counselor in their corner. And so when we're talking about the engagement of students and you all being counselors and educators, it's the fact that you are in our students' corner. You're creating those safe spaces. You're creating the opportunities for students to come to you and say, I feel like I'm succeeding in this process, or I feel like I'm failing. What can I do better? So shout out to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and to those who have put in the chat those 4 individuals. And yes, that is correct. So let's begin with our first interactive activity. You'll go to menti.com. You can access it on your computer or on your cell phone. You can even scan using your camera the QR code. And I will be on the live site so I can see your responses. But once you do menti.com, you'll have to enter the code 360421 and 3. I won't toggle between the presentation and the live site. So this presentation will be up so you can see the code. But the question you're going to be answering is, how do students become aware of soft skills? So if you'll go again to menti.com, type in that code, and let's see what your thoughts are when it comes to engaging students' awareness of soft skills. So I'll give a little moment as we begin that activity. And as you're thinking, some ways that I know about engaging student soft skills is maybe using some SEL curriculum. We see here that someone put through play in the early years. I'm so glad you said that. We're going to have a wonderful video that highlights that as well. Formal instruction, teaching them to make soft skills a part of the curriculum is beneficial. Yes, yes. Play, the purposeful play, hopefully demonstrating, the soft skills on a daily basis. Yes, because it's that piece of life readiness. It's a daily occurrence through clubs, organizations, interacting with others, and of course, teachers, parents, in that role modeling aspect. So we'll continue and move on, but feel free to continue that activity so that you can have the responses. And so you can just see what your colleagues think when it comes to bringing the awareness to our students in soft skills. And this also is another opportunity for you to engage interactively in activity with your students. Okay, so we're going to transition. I know we just transitioned, so I don't think we have any questions at this time. Of course, I'm making that assumption. So if you do have a question, please go ahead and put it in the chat. But we're now going to go and start talking about why skill development matters and the importance of that. So this is Oklahoma Workforce Skills Gap, and hopefully by now you have seen this gap, and you can call yourself an expert in disseminating the information and reading this. But basically, this graph is telling us that by the year of 2028, our students won't be employable unless they have an associate or a certification degree. They have to have some type of post-secondary certification again or degree to advance and be hireable in the workforce. So that is daunting, that's the word, not staunting, I made up my own word. That is a daunting statistic to have in front of us. And so how do we ensure that our students are getting the skills that they need, especially in this virtual environment, so that we can help close the workforce gap for Oklahoma? So let's talk about it today. So we had a comment earlier in our activity that really talked about how do we have the level of awareness and how it starts early. And so let's go ahead and watch this video and see that in action.
The driver for learning is the social connection. Activating a child's cognitive skills begins with activating their social connectedness. Children in this school are starting the day with an adult saying to them, "I see you, I know you, I'm connecting with you, and you're important to me."
We start each day by greeting every kid at the door.
Good morning, Declan.
You look pretty, Miss Turner.
Thank you, baby. Guess what I sing this weekend?
Every classroom does some variation of, would you like a high five, handshake, or hug? Essentially, it's what greeting would you like?
How you doing, handsome?
Good.
There is a great deal of cultural sensitivity and empowerment for children to say, "Here is how I want to greet you."
High five, handshake, or hug. You got your hair done? Good morning, Molly. You got your hair done? Let me just turn around. I love it. All right, we're gonna have a good day today? All right. High five, handshake, or hug.
During that time, I'm just trying to connect with them,
All right.
help them from the transition from home to school, and just kind of like a pulse check to see where they are.
Oh, I knew you wanted a hug. How you feeling today, sir?
Good.
We're gonna have a good day? Look at my eyes.
Do they look escalated? Do they look triggered? Do they look upset? So it's a way for me to see, okay, who needs to be where? How can I help? How can I be assistance to start their day off most effectively?
Good morning, Ariella. How you doing today?
I'm being very intentional about my interactions with students, right? So it's not just I'm in the back of the room, hey, come in. No, I'm making a connection with them. I have eye contact with them. I'm checking in how they're doing. I'm checking to make sure they're okay.
Good morning, friends.
Good morning, friends.
I think the impact is deep relationships. I get to know my students. I get to check in with them. I get to find out something about them. They get to find out something about me. We get to make a connection. And that starts with the greeting at the door.
All right, come on in.
So a child is walking in the door feeling cared for, empowered, and encouraged. And that teacher is focusing in on who that child is. And that's how the day starts.
Isn't that a wonderful way to start the morning with our students, especially in the earlier grades? And I wanted to share that video so you could see and even gain some strategies that maybe you're already incorporating in your advisory classes. Maybe you're incorporating when your students come and have that one-on-one with you in your counseling suite or counseling office, or maybe this is something that your school hasn't thought about incorporating, or some of your teachers haven't thought about it. And this is some helpful strategies that they can do. One thing I really liked about that video was the intentionality piece, that the teacher was talking about how she gets in their eye level and says, okay, let's look at each other's eyes. You know, you're building that communication skills, you're building the critical thinking skills. Students are having to gauge, do I do a handshake, a high five, or a hug? So that's showing you right now why the importance of skill development starting early helps as our students transition from elementary, middle school, and high school. Continuing on. Now let's talk about 21st century skills, which really are the groundwork and the framework for all skills when it pertains to academic and career and ethically, it's just a wonderful framework for our students to have. So we break it down by learning, literacy, and life, because we see that it's a continuum. It just doesn't stop once they leave elementary or once they leave high school. It's throughout their whole entire life. That our students need to have those 4 C's of the critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, communication. And we actually got to see what that looked like in action from the video we just watched. Literacy is really how do they start processing that information and putting it into action. So what is that tangible piece that we can come with? How do we incorporate technology into the skill sets that we are learning and building? And then life, when we talk about life readiness, it's really for our students. How are they leading? How do they motivate others? How do they adapt to change? How are their social skills? Maybe they're more introverted than being an extrovert. So how do we get them to come out of their shells and talk with other classmates and share about their days and just all that dialogue? So it's very important to see how our skill sets, really our social emotional learning skills, connect to work-based learning. So when we break it down into each grade level, we start with elementary. And when we're talking about work-based learning, we're talking about it on an SEL level of when our students would dress up. They'd come and share what career inspires them and why do they want to be a baker. I know for me, personal story, I love my easy bake oven when I was in elementary school. And so when I got a chance to do show and tell and show some things that I could make, of course I ate them, or it wasn't no longer the point where you could eat that product, but I at least could show that, or some kind of artwork that I did with my class. When students transition to middle school in a work-based learning concept of SEL, it's really when our students are starting to have those SMART goals. What is it that they want to achieve and by short term, midterm, and long term? And how do they start now exploring career clusters? So back to my story, in middle school, I was the 8th grade art club president. And so I'm now had to figure out when I was running for president, what are the goals? What did I want my classmates to take away? That if I was your president, this is what I would accomplish for us throughout the whole year. So now you start seeing it come into play, into action. I'm putting goals and I'm getting a tangible plan in order. So as we transition to high school, how that looks is our students are now at a level to monitor the progress on those goals that they had and build maybe a resume to get ready for the work field. And even those interest surveys, especially as we have ICAP that's been implemented. So starting in the 9th grade, getting those career interest surveys completed annually to see what's my interest, how has it changed, how have I grown from it. So back to my story in high school, it was just being the opportunity to take a family and consumer science course and learn how to create recipes and have a recipe box and have that going with it. And that was a nice segue to action, because that's beyond high school. How do we make this tangible? How do we implement what we learned in the classroom into our everyday learning? So an example would be students applying their study techniques to maybe create job manuals. So for me, when I actually got into undergrad, my degree set connected back to my love of family and community consumer, sciences, and my love of science in general. And I actually majored in dietitian, nutrition, and food management. So you could see throughout the course of how that can happen even on a student level. So that's the good thing about those critical skills that we need to continue and how it aligns to work-based learning. So when it talks about being life ready, well, if you attended Sarah Kirk's session on counseling and the framework and all that stuff for new beginners, she shared with you something that's happening from student support in the coming months that will be available is actually a social emotional learning competencies and implementation guide. So I have the opportunity to serve on that team as well and really provide the lens of work-based learning, workforce, and life readiness. So those competencies, you'll see it broken down by self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, responsible decision-making, and relationship skills by grade level. Because the purpose is to make sure that our students are life ready and they are expanding their growth mindsets. And a big piece of that comes in reflection, which we'll talk about in a couple of slides. So, what are some strategies to prepare our students to be life ready? Well, when I was growing up, I really just loved to break my words down. And so that's what I did with life. I broke it down. Let's start with leveraging interactive tools. And this is a great opportunity to have a fun time in the chat. So you see the game of life image. Go ahead and tell me, what was one of your favorite board games when you were growing up? Mine was Monopoly, and it tied in very nicely with financial literacy. How do I make sure I can count the spaces? How do I make sure I can count the money, etc.? So you want to leverage interactive tools. The simpleness from doing a board game can be the same thing as doing something virtual like minty.com. For the I, you want to increase student ownership. You want to make sure that students have an opportunity to lead in the classroom. Assign them roles so that they know, you know what, I can do this one day, I can do that. That's what's very important. And then you want to focus and make sure when anytime you're talking to your students, and I know I'm telling you stuff you already know, but it's just refocusing on that clear and consistent behavior expectations. And when we start early, that's amazing, because when we start in elementary school and then they hear it again in middle school, then by the time they get to high school, they should already know, what are my classroom norms? What does it mean to show up on time? What does it mean that I have to raise my hand before I speak? What does it mean that I have to listen to my classmates, etc.? And then the E, definitely not last, it is for empowering our student voice and encouraging celebrations. Our students can always help shape their path, but we also have to give them an avenue to have that voice. And if we just are intentional about listening, we can also understand and reshape how we do our curriculum, reshape how we incorporate interactive activities or in-person activities. It's just listening to them, engaging, what is their learning pattern? How do we help assess and ensure that they're on the right track? And then also, student voice is good. So when they're talking to you as the counselors, you can share it with the teachers and say, you know what? This is what your students bragged about and said that they're learning. And this is something that maybe if we incorporated this, we could have more traction and engagement with our students, because that's what's important as well. So I'm going to pause real quickly before we transition into career exploration to see if there's any questions. And I do see wonderful games. Mousetrap, shout out to you. That was a fun game for me as well as Operation. Don't see any questions thus far in the chat, but if you have them, again, keep them coming, and we will have a Q&A session. So getting into why career exploration matters. Well, if you haven't seen this, this is Oklahoma's work-based learning continuum. It's breaking it down, starting about learning about work, learning through work, and learning at work. So you will see the strategies of career awareness, exploration, preparation all throughout. You will also see that when we talk about individual career academic planning. If you attended Marissa Lightsey's session about creating an equitable ICAP process, then you probably heard about career awareness and exploration and preparation. So it's a nice tie-in. And the same thing, if you attend Petra Woodard's session about academic counseling and what is it all about, you should probably hear about career awareness, exploration, and preparation, because it's showing you the nice tie-in, especially as our students, again, transition grade levels and school levels, school systems as well. So in career awareness and exploration, I won't go through it too much because we've kind of already talked about it, but this is where we're giving that awareness piece. You know, what skills or what careers are even out there? Why do I need to explore them? How do I explore them? How does it relate to Oklahoma? Oh, you're telling me that there is a factory in, oh goodness, there is a factory in Woodward, and Woodward's known for pig farming. I didn't know that. So what is it that we can learn about Oklahoma and the careers and industries that are already available here? And highlight that, because Oklahoma has a plethora of careers ranging from energy all the way to agriculture and back to health sciences. But if our students don't get a chance to see that, whether that's in the classrooms or it's in a day in the life video, or even in the factories or the offices or the buildings itself, they won't get a chance to see that career in action. And that's what we want them to do so that we can proceed into career preparation where they're getting maybe an internship or they're doing a job shadowing and learning from the professional why they have them. And then proceeding into learning at work, that's more of the apprenticeship programs. Now you're an apprentice and you have more of an extensiveness with your apprenticeship. I probably said that incorrectly, but apprenticeship relationship. And so now you see you have someone pouring into you more intensely about a craft, a trade, a skill set specifically. Maybe it would be welding, for an example. So you see the continuum and why it's necessary, and the quality aspect of ensuring work-based learning is making sure that you have those clear partnership agreements in place. You have that authentic work experience component. You have to tie in that component piece. What are they learning? What are they reflecting upon? What's the tangible project-based learning that they are creating from it? And the structured learning time, starting in class and then teaching them those soft skills. And then a couple of weeks later, having them go into their field of the internship and seeing it firsthand. But we will also see in a video real shortly how you can even make internship and work-based learning work within your school system, your school district, your school site, without even leaving if you may be in a rural community and you have limited access to resources and industry leaders. So how does work-based learning tie into ICAP? Well, hopefully you've heard by now, students must complete and record at least one service or work-based learning experience in 9th grade through 12th grade before they graduate. So basically, we say one, but that's the bare minimum, folks. I'm going to encourage you to do more than one, because the moment our students have access to these opportunities, the moment they have access is the moment they decrease student loan debt, the moment they have more security to know that this is the path I want to take. And that's what we want to do. We want to ensure before they graduate, they have a well-rounded awareness of what career path they will be taking. Some guidance resource for you if you hadn't seen this. This is also one of the handouts that is in the Whova app for you today. It's basically breaking down what is service learning, what is work-based learning. Service learning is more the piece of those volunteer aspects, giving back to your community, where work-based learning is a little bit more the academic and the technical piece, the real-world experiences, the hands-on equipping our students in that real world application piece. It also breaks down the course coding for it. What are our student outcomes? Because we want our students to not only have these experiences, but be able to, again, reflect on them, recall, understand what's the purpose of these experiences, analyze how it's going to be beneficial, etc. And a good thing about this document is it can always be changing, but it shows you right now, it tweaked it into how do we make in-person work-based learning transition to virtual. And in a few slides, I will show you some ideas as well. Real quickly, just touch base when it comes to internships and AB, advanced placement, IB, concurrent and dual. Each of those, and of course our career tech coursework, each of those connect with the post-secondary opportunities indicator in our school report card. So I wanted to make sure, since we have been in the midst of distance learning and changing as we go, I wanted to make sure you had the most relevant information, especially for our school year 2021, to see your course coding and to see more guidance when it comes to the school report card and the post-secondary indicator. As a friendly reminder, when you're coming to course coding, wanted to make sure you had the course codes for internships and both service learning. Be mindful that there are two different codes for internship, one specifically for juniors, the other one specifically for seniors. Also, when it comes to service learning, even though that does meet the ICAP requirement, just to let you know, that course code does not count towards the post-secondary opportunities indicator. So keep that in the framework. Even though those experiences are wonderful avenues for volunteer opportunities and community engagement, I just wanted you to make sure that you had that full understanding. All right, I have another video for you, and once you're watching this, excuse me, I'm so excited about it too. Just see how that you can make work-based learning incorporated into every classroom that you have. And maybe this is some good strategies and points that you can share with your teachers, or maybe even incorporate into your own advisory class. So it's a little longer, about 4 minutes. So let's go ahead and get watching.
And that's how we're trying to keep the ruler off of the ink. Good deal.
Because students are doing real, authentic work, a light goes on. And they suddenly realize, wow, this is an actual career, that I'm learning skills that I could apply in the real world.
That's a rough photo. Okay, well, what would you do? The vision at Maplewood Richmond Heights High School is school as apprenticeship. That's our motto that we try to implement in as many classes as possible.
It's about getting us ready for what's after high school, for jobs, college. The school does that by giving us opportunities to do internships, and we also do it within our classes.
There are ways that every teacher can put those career options into their coursework.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, good. That works.
If you're trying to build a student that has the confidence to go out and work in the real world, they have to be doing real world work. So whenever the task can be something with real stakes, the better.
Running something like the print shop, they're beholden to an actual client who is relying on them to have something ready by a certain date. All right, guys, take a look up at the board over here. Let's see, Emily and Andrew. We need those IDs done by October 7th.
In that class, it's like a job for us. It gives me a chance to see what kind of career I would be getting into if I went that direction.
We print posters, we create brochures, anything that a teacher might need in the classroom, and we print all student IDs. They're learning what it's like to have an order waiting for you, to have the materials you need to make that, and then go and deliver it to the client. It's literally from start to finish.
I learned Photoshop and InDesign. Today I was working on the literary magazine for our school.
We are interacting with teachers, making sure that we communicate well. Is this okay? Would you like any adjustments to this?
Part of their grade actually comes from teacher feedback. Did you contact the client? Did you come up with a price? Did you do any kind of quality check on it? If you were a graphic designer, you wouldn't survive if you didn't do those steps. Sweet. Okay, as soon as 10th goes in, then you're ready to rock.
Okay, so let's get started with the run through. I think what we need to do is just go through the to-do list and make sure that all the logistics are in place.
The class that I'm teaching now is about the 4 cornerstones: leadership, stewardship, scholarship, and citizenship.
The focus of it is to apply our 4 cornerstones to service projects. So we're teaching middle schoolers about the 4 cornerstones. We wanted to get practice speaking and organizing things and really getting a feel for teaching. The group leader makes sure that you write down the points that they get. Teachers, they must work very hard to plan a lesson because it took us a couple of weeks to be able to just plan that one day.
So the day that we taught the students, I was at the stewardship rotation, focusing on the environment. I had like this pile of things that were either trash or recyclable.
So can you guys see if you can find a number on that one?
The experience of teaching, it helped me realize what I wanted to do out of high school. And one of my choices would be environmental teaching. It was really fun to get to practice that.
Okay, well, good job. You guys got all of them right.
I think the benefit for students is, it kind of goes back to that old cliche where the student says, when am I ever going to use this? They get to see how the skills that they're learning in class apply in a variety of different contexts.
If we didn't do this, I'd probably be really lost in what I wanted to do after school. It really helps figure out what kind of work you want to get into and what that looks like.
It prepares them for college, or if they're going to go into a trade, it shows them how the real world works. Oh, there it goes. Perfect. We're in business.
All right, hopefully you got some good strategies and takeaway from that. But again, the main reason I wanted to share that video was so that you could see how you can make work-based learning work within your own school site without going outside. I mentioned earlier about a reflection piece. I added as a handout our reflection template for you to use. You can use that or create your own. But just wanted to show this real quickly as just some ideas if you hadn't thought about how students can reflect. But reflection is big because it helps assess their learning. It helps assess their growth mindsets. So one little idea is you can use Google Forms, create a form for students to complete. And at the end of the class, you can share results and help plan further instruction. I wanted to let you know about the work-based learning survey. It is giving you another opportunity, if you haven't already, to complete this survey. Basically, we are trying to create a database so that we know who is the work-based learning representative at your school site, so that I can have better connection and guidance with each of them. So if you can share this with your teachers, share it with your school administrators so that everyone can fill out that and we can just see how you're making work-based learning even happen right now during distance learning. So let's transition into engaging students virtually. And I want to showcase real quickly some online modules that we have. First, I always want to take a nod and say, if you haven't seen our Return to Learn Oklahoma guidance, just real quickly on work-based learning, we talked about how do we modify those work-based learning activities, how do we transition them quickly to a virtual space, our virtual ideas, how do we continue to strengthen our relationships, and how do we plan for when we do return to start doing work-based learning, of course, also focusing on the social emotional learning aspect as our students have endured an enormous amount of trauma. You yourselves have endured enormous amounts of trauma, just living and surviving and trying to make it through a global pandemic. Another activity for today is going to be asking the question. We're going to go back to menti.com and we're going to use the same code, but this time we're going to answer the question, with distance learning, how does your school provide work-based learning experiences to students? And as you're putting in your information, this could still be something that's been a struggle, especially right now during distance learning, and that's okay. Maybe one of the videos you just watched, you got a pointer that, oh, this is how I can incorporate it, work-based learning. So I'll pause for a brief moment so you all can go to menti.com, input code 3604213, and just share how some ways that your school has provided work-based learning in the midst of distance learning. So a brief little pause. We don't typically offer this at the middle school level. Okay, and that's okay. Hopefully on some of these videos are just some of the things that you're hearing today in the session. You can be inspired how to start beginning to offer those activities. You did Career Exposure Week. I love hearing that. Hands-on projects and courses, very nice. Keep adding into it, but for the sake of time, I'm going to keep going with the presentation. But I love seeing job shadows, internships, virtual job shadowing. That's a wonderful resource. I love that you're connecting with your CTE programs and career speakers, etc. It's so good to see that it's still happening. So some pointers for you are just some helpful ways to think outside the box if you haven't been able to make this happen yet. When you're in your PK through 5th grade, some things that you can do is invite guest speakers. You can do it virtually in person. I'll do a shout out in a couple of slides to show you what that looks like. Count around the house. How many lamps do I have? How many chairs do I see? Making a one-page document and having that activity with your students. When it comes to 6th through 8th grade, some things you could do is a virtual scavenger hunt. What do they see outside in nature that they can find? How many pennies can you find in your house? They even have this amazing typewriting activity, which is building those critical thinking, strengthening how fast someone can type, the literacy skills and spelling, etc. So things like that for you. When we talk about 9th through 12th grade, there's things such as virtual reality. I know Google has made some online resources, so that students can see a virtual reality of different offices and what that career exploration looks like. Even have a virtual escape room. I participated in one and it was fun. I always wanted to do that, but to do it virtually and try to use those, again, communication skills, critical skills. So you're still enhancing and bringing out the skills and sets in your students by intertwining virtual learning. So just some ideas if you hadn't thought about it, and hopefully that helped inspire you to say, oh, we could make that happen. When it comes to internships, I will have to say, during distance learning, internships can be virtual. However, they must follow the guidelines that are in the internship FAQ. We still have to use the proper course coding, how you set up the structure of that, because you still have to ensure the safety of your students now that you are putting them in the presence of an industry leader. However, many school districts have been able to still do virtual internships and in-person internships, and they transition to project-based learning so that their students have been able to do a tangible product that comes out of that. So I'll share in a couple of slides how that has happened as well. Just wanted to touch base on that for internships for our 11th and 12th grade students. If you haven't gotten connected, I encourage you to get connected to OSDE Connect. This is the state regents, excuse me, it is not the state regents, it's the State Department, forgive me. I also worked at the state regent, so sometimes I use those interchangeably, have a love for both secondary and post-secondary, so forgive my lens, but this is the State Department of Education's online learning community. Here you will see online learning modules in a plethora of spaces. Specifically for work-based learning, we have created a module for you to talk about some pre-assessment, testing students' knowledge, real quickly, like a 5-minute question survey of what is their knowledge of work-based learning. And then after you have used this with your students, they can even go through a post survey and really talk about what they've learned. This module is fantastic, not because I'm just bragging on it, but it's fantastic because it has a plethora of day in the life videos. So now our students are able to watch what it looks like. So that would be a virtual job shadowing and reflect upon those videos. What did they learn from this health industry leader? So I want to be a nurse. What does that actually look like? How did I learn and receive content from this video? So these are the steps that you need to take to get started. Also, if you would like to have a specific code for just your school and your students to get logged in, I have access to create you one and get that for you. So just connect with me, or you just use these steps and get connected with the module. And also there's some online resources of different community organizations and industries that have actually produced virtual virtual work-based learning experiences for school districts during this time of distance learning. And many of them realize that it's good to have this type of learning expanded throughout. So they have kept it on their website. So a plethora of resources there for you. This is what the module looks like. So once you log in, you will know you are in the right spot. The next module I encourage you to get connected to is actually the Oklahoma Career Exposure Week module. And if you had the opportunity to participate last week, we just wrapped it up, had an amazing 9 sessions with 10 virtual speakers, ranging from healthcare, construction, energy, also aerospace and defense. So just a wonderful week for our students to be able to see in the classrooms, and even if they were in their actual home, virtually connect with these industry leaders and school districts participate. All of the recordings for 2021 are now on the module, and also the recordings for 2020 are there as well. Again, another piece, they're just 20-minute videos. Students can watch, reflect on it, and learn and have that career exposure, especially in Oklahoma. And I love the fact that we had a diverse group of industry leaders. So our students actually got to see females who were mechanical engineers and just I was just so happy. So hopefully you had a chance to participate or you're going to share those experiences. Now I get the honor to show you, this is what the Career Week module looks like so that you can see it. I was jumping ahead. But at least now you see what it looks like. This is the module that we'll use annually because it's an annual event. And this is where you'll go, get connected, get registered, get to read the bios and headshots from the industry leaders, and even we've made student questions in advance so that you can prepare with your students and they can ask these industry leaders. And it's very nice to see some of the industry leaders get a little choked up like, oh, that was a hard question. That was good. And that's what we want. We want our students learning in that regards. So this is what I was really excited about to share. So shout out to Jennifer Birch, who I believe she's with us today. She's the PK through 12 counselor at Rush Springs Public Schools. And I love Rush Springs. I have actually been there multiple times. One is actually being at the school site and seeing, and I believe it's still structured this way, but their whole PK through 12 is in one building. And that is a rarity to see, but it's nice to see. But the second shout out to them is, if you didn't know, they are the watermelon capital of the world. And I can attest they have some of the best watermelons ever. That's something my family and we did during this pandemic. We needed to get out the house. And so we would drive to Rush Springs during watermelon season and actually get some. So I'm a big fan of Rush Springs, Oklahoma. But I wanted to highlight this because they got inspired by attending one of our college and career readiness webinars and hearing about Oklahoma Career Exposure Week, that they were like, you know what, we're going to make this happen for our elementary students. And it was PK through 5th grade. So I want to say it's possible and you can do it, and they're living proof. So on day one, they really focused on service careers. So they had industry leaders from the National Guard, from firefighters, police, and even a game warden. So you can see their faces. You see my wonderful students and my babies. I feel like they're my babies. They got their mask on, but they're smiling and they're getting that exposure. Here was day 2, which was a focus still on the service, but this time on healthcare careers. So they had like an EMT and a nurse and even a physician assistant, what we call a PA present. So you got to see what it looks like to be on an EMT. And again, you see these students smiling, engaged, hands raised. They are learning, and they are learning at early ages. And I'm going to tell you, I know for sure that these students will forever remember this moment, and many of them will probably even go into a service or a healthcare career just by having that one light bulb of a moment with an industry leader to see what that actually looks like. So this is, I love my job because I get the fun aspect of career exploration and showing districts how you can make it happen. So hopefully this inspires you as much as me, that you can make it happen in elementary, you can make it happen in middle school, and you can make it happen in high school, because we're getting them ready for life readiness. And that's what it's really all about. So thank you for Rush Springs Elementary for being willing to share these wonderful photos of student learning and engagement with us today. I have a final video for you. This is about 2 minutes, so it's not too long. But just some good strategies for how to keep students engaged in virtual settings.
It can feel like a big change, but online teaching is still teaching. Your virtual classroom will need to be managed, and you will still need to teach responsively and differentiate your instruction. Yes, there will be some adaptations, but setting norms, cultivating belonging, and making your curriculum compelling, those are still at the core. Here are 6 tips from seasoned veterans for keeping students engaged in a virtual environment. Try making your own digital content, like videos or slide decks, but stay laser focused on keeping instruction clear and simple. The research says that being your natural, authentic self is another key here. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, and let your personality shine through. Navigating virtual spaces can be confusing, and you don't want students missing critical info. Be sure to have one central hub where all the latest updates go. You can create other spaces like chat rooms or lounges for group discussions or side conversations. Virtual learning doesn't need to be chaotic. Share clear expectations for participation, respectful interactions, and dress code. Ask students to design agreements together to ensure every voice is heard. It will help them stay focused, empathetic, and kind. You may not all be in the same room, but students should feel a sense of community. So make time for small group work and relationship building activities. That keeps the humans behind the texts or video screens connected. Giving your students some space to learn independently builds critical skills, but they'll need support too. Set online office hours so your students know when they can reach you. You should also participate in discussion threads and offer guidance and encouragement regularly. Research shows students retain more knowledge when they've actively engaged with materials. Keep learners from becoming passive observers by finding ways to build in polls, break for brainstorms, or drop guided questions into the instruction.
So hopefully you got some good pointers from there. And we're coming to the conclusion, I promise, of this presentation. Real quickly going to industry engagement. You hopefully have seen this before, but how to get connected is just reach out to your local community members, make sure you identify your current and future individuals, and then we gave you direct links so that you can have access to how do I connect with career tech, chambers, and workforce boards. The second one is developing the outreach methods, sample partnership letters, agreements, and calendars there for you. And hopefully you've got to see what that looks like in action when we just saw some images from Rush Springs Elementary. Wanted to let you know about our webinar series. We are hosting the College and Career Readiness series until June 17th. Our next one is March 18th, and we're going to talk about National Guard careers and advanced placements. And all of these recordings will be housed on okedge.com. We even had a recent recording, shout out to Bartlesville Public Schools, who was sharing how they are doing their internship program in a virtual space and how they transition to project-based learning. So these resources will be available at the conclusion of this series. Just resources for college and career readiness, if you needed those direct links. And then I'm going to get and say thank you for attending. This is the link to this specific survey to just respond, tell us what you think, and then also you will get a survey on March 11th, again, as Shauna said, so you can complete that one as well. Again, I want to say thank you for your time. This is my contact information. If you have questions, feel free to input them into the Whova app or the chat. I haven't seen any, so I think we're doing good, but please know if you want to input them in the Whova app, I will personally respond to any questions via that method, because I know we are right at the time, but I do want to give a chance if there are any questions today to feel free to ask, and I will definitely answer them for you. Any questions before we conclude? And if there are no questions, that is okay, because that means you got some information that you needed and got inspired, and I'm so glad to hear that. Well, I want to thank you all for attending this session and say we still have an amazing session still left for Counselors Only Conference. So continue to enjoy the rest of your conference, and I will see you when I see you. Thank you all.